Dealing with bugs can be pretty gross and kind of a nightmare. Hi guys, welcome and welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about reptiles that don't need to eat bugs. So often I see people that really like reptiles and they don't want to deal with bugs, or parents that are trying to get their kids their first reptile and they don't want bugs in their house, and that's certainly understandable because they can escape, they usually stink, they just don't want crickets and roaches and stuff running around their house, which is completely understandable, especially if you have a child that you're trying to teach some responsibility and they're having to get those bugs out of those containers. It's certainly understandable that you don't want crickets escaping into your house. So I thought I'd make a quick list of 5 animals that don't need to eat bugs. Keep in mind, it's not the easiest thing to find reptiles that don't need bugs. The amount of herbivorous reptiles is pretty slim. So a couple on these lists are going to be very expensive, but they're really cool, and I just wanted to give you guys a list of those. So here we go. So the first one on the list, and the first one that most people think about when they think about animals that don't need bugs, are gonna be tortoises. I know the thought of tortoises might scare some people because a lot of tortoises get very big. So I thought I'd give you guys a couple that stay really small and don't need any kind of insects, and you can keep them outdoors or indoors. Most tortoises do prefer outdoors if you can do it, but these guys are fine in the house too. And those two are going to be the Hermann's tortoise and the Russian tortoise. Hermann's tortoises are a little harder to find, but if you can find them, they are really pretty tortoises. They only get up to about 11 inches. They live for at least 20 years. They do need a long enclosure so that they can walk back and forth with some kind of loose substrate in them, and they are going to need UV lighting and a temperature gradient that goes up to about 95 degrees. And like all tortoises, like I said, they're going to need that loose substrate because they need a place to dig. The Russian tortoise is much more widely available, but do be aware that most of the time these are wild-caught tortoises. But if you are okay with that, then they make really good pets. They settle in very quickly. They also are going to need the ability to dig, a UV light, a temperature gradient that goes up to about 90 degrees. And these guys are actually smaller than Hermann's tortoises. These guys only get up to 8 to 10 inches, but they do live for at least 40 years. So just know that any kind of tortoise is going to live for a while, so they are a pretty big investment. People do tend to shy away from tortoises just because they are owned by everyone and they're very slow moving, and people often think of them as boring, but they can be so cool. They're an animal that is going to absolutely love it if you walk up to their enclosure and hand feed them vegetables. You can take them outside. They love going outside. Just know that they are a really cool pet to have. Next up is going to be the Uramastyx, and I've talked about Uramastyx in a previous video where I talked about the best diurnal reptiles. Uramastyx are really cool. They come in a variety of beautiful colors. They normally stay at about 10 to 18 inches. However, just know that there is a species of Uramastyx, the Egyptian Uramastyx, that can easily get up to 30 inches. So make sure that you are paying attention to what kind of Uramastyx that you are getting. These guys live for about 15 years and they are from a desert climate, so they like it hot. They also have to have pretty big enclosures even though they are a pretty small reptile, so make sure that you can provide them with a large enclosure and a very hot basking spot, usually about 120 degrees. And along with those vegetables, they're also going to eat seeds, so you can go and buy lentils from your supermarket, or you can buy commercial bird seed and feed them, and they absolutely love it. I did see that there is a little debate about feeding them bugs, but for the most part, everything I've read, they do not eat bugs in the wild. The people that do feed them bugs are only feeding them a couple a month as a treat, so it is in no way, shape, or form necessary to feed a Uramastyx any kind of living creatures. This next animal is usually pretty cheap, but they're not easy to find, and that is the chuckwalla. Chuckwallas are native to southwestern United States and the northwestern parts of Mexico, where they inhabit deserts. So they are another diurnal reptile that comes from the desert and likes it hot. These guys only get about 14 to 20 inches and they live for at least 20 years. They will spend a lot of time basking in hot spots of up to 120 degrees as well, but they do need a 4-foot long cage and UV lighting as well. So they do follow a lot of those same things that the Uramastyx did, but they're definitely a more unique pet that not a lot of people are gonna have. The iguana. The iguana is everywhere and anywhere that there are reptiles. They are often sold as beginner pets. These are not beginner pets. If you're gonna get an iguana, please know what you're getting into because they are one of the most common reptiles sold today. But if you've done the research and you are prepared for one of these and you understand that they're going to get 6 to 7 foot and need a huge enclosure, then by all means go for it if you're prepared. These guys are herbivores, so they're only going to eat vegetation, and just like the last two, they're going to need a very hot spot of up to 120 degrees. They do need a 12 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot enclosure. And a lot of times, especially if you live in a very hot environment, people will just make enclosures for them outside, which is really cool. They come in a few different very beautiful colors. And like I said, if you can do it, then by all means do it. Just never ever ever go into an iguana unprepared because they can be a lot. Also, please note that the males can get aggressive with age. So just because you have a baby, that seems fantastic. As they get older, they can get very aggressive, so please keep that in mind as well, because if that happens, you're gonna have to accommodate for that. The last one is one of my all-time favorites, and they are very expensive, and that is the Solomon's Island skink, or the monkey-tailed skink, or the prehensile-tailed skink. These guys are very expensive at about $900, but they are the coolest species of skink, in my opinion, because they have prehensile tails, which means that they can use those tails as a hand. They can grab with them, they can hang upside down, and this is just an animal that you're all around not gonna see a lot of people have. They are the largest species of skink, getting up to and even over 2 foot long. They live for at least 20 years, and they are purely arboreal, so they are going to need very tall, large enclosures so that they can climb. And as with most arboreal lizards, they're going to need a high humidity of over 70%. They're also a lot of work and they're hard to find, but if you can get your hands on one of these, you absolutely should, because these guys are absolutely amazing. And as with all of my list videos, I have a couple of honorable mentions. The first one is going to be the crested gecko. Now, the crested gecko is not an herbivore, but they survive mostly on commercial gecko diets that actually already have the insects included in them. There is debate over whether or not you need to feed your crested gecko and gargoyle gecko insects. However, from personal experience, my crested gecko and gargoyle gecko will not eat bugs. They refuse it every single time. Dexter did go through a phase where he would eat bugs, but he just kind of stopped one day and he hasn't since, and my gargoyle gecko has never eaten bugs even though I've tried. And I found that's the case with a lot of crested geckos and gargoyle geckos. They just flat out refuse it. Also, until recently, it was thought that you could just feed your crested geckos and gargoyle geckos that commercial gecko diet for its entire life and it'd be fine, which, as I said, it's what I do. So, as an honorable mention, I'm going to go ahead and put those on this list just because there is a possibility that you would never have to touch a bug ever to feed them, and they are super easy. They stay at room temperature. They have to have pretty small enclosures until they get big, but they do take a while to grow. They don't need any kind of special lights because they are nocturnal, and they don't need any kind of heat source. So if you want to go that route, that is my first honorable mention. Blue-tongued skinks are my next honorable mention. Blue-tongued skinks, again, are not herbivores. They are omnivores. However, just like the crested geckos, you can get them their meat protein from other sources. So, blue-tongued skinks are kind of like garbage disposals. They're going to eat all the fresh fruits and vegetables, but you can also feed them canned dog foods and canned skink foods. You can feed them boiled beef, chicken. They can eat eggs. They can get that meat protein from sources where you get your meat protein from if you eat meat. And you don't ever have to have bugs in your house for them either, because they do have other ways of getting it. And as most of you guys know, blue-tongued skinks are an absolutely amazing pet, even for beginners. They're a lot like bearded dragons, where they do have to have a pretty good sized tank, at very least a 40-gallon breeder, but you're gonna want to get them at least a tank that's 4 foot long. They do have to have UV lighting and a basking spot, but once their initial setup is set up, then they're super easy. But yeah, that is an amazing, amazing, amazing choice if you want a lizard that doesn't eat bugs. And that's about about it, guys. I'm sorry my list isn't bigger, but like I said, most lizards are gonna need to eat those bugs, but these are just some options in case you don't want bugs at your house. I wanted to give a big thank you so much to you guys. I just hit 1,600 subscribers, which is crazy because I feel like I was just in a video saying that I was hitting 1,000, and that took me a little over a year to do, and I've already gone up 600 more. So thank you so much. You guys are absolutely amazing. Like I always say, you guys are the bee's knees. I'm beyond happy that I have people to talk about reptiles with. So thank you so much, guys. If you're not already following me on Instagram, you can follow me over there at Elle.622, where I post pictures of my animals throughout the week. And if you like this video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. I put out new videos every single Sunday. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye.